Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode, which I feel is an important. Seems like I need to do CPR on this live stream, guys. Okay, I think we're back to normal now with the live stream. Maybe there was nothing wrong, but on my side. Anyways, guys. Visionary victories, an important topic. Now, you see, what I can share as a human being, every time I sit down to give these talks, I'm like, all right, what is the value? I'm like one human being in a universe of a billion trillion stars. The external cosmos just extends endlessly. And so we are like sands on a beach discussing the nature of the shores hitting the water, hitting the sand. However, I have paid attention to something in my own experience, and the best way I could tell you, the gift I'm trying to share with this talk, is that it's kind of like I had a conversation with someone close, and I can tell you we were discussing the views we had on money, on the philosophy of making money, the philosophy of how do you approach money in this life? Do you just go and chase it? Do you become like that hunter with a spear and you go out your door and you just like find whatever you can and bring that kind of like back in the day, people would bring like, animals they'd hunted. Now we're bringing checks back home. And so I remember saying that before, it's kind of like, imagine you're an employee, you're an employer of a company, okay, of a business. Now, which employee would you invest in? You would invest in the employee that has seen the greatest vision. That means if you have a team and you were in a boardroom and you were discussing the problems of the company, the one person who is seeing the situation clearer than the rest, that one person rises. So what does that mean? That means even when you read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, which I'm going to read a bunch of passages, you will see this concept of a balance between heaven and earth. And so when I was discussing with that person, my philosophy on money is that it's not something that you should think of the money. You shouldn't think of the money. You should think like you're a temporary being. You're here and alive for a certain time. What grand project can you do where money becomes the side symptom of it? Do you know? And so for me, it's like I can tell you nothing inspires a man towards efficiency more than his mortality. Your own mortality. When you see you're here in a little while, do you want to just get, just see an increase in the digits of your bank account, or do you want to see a progression, a journey of the experience maturing? So there's a wealth that you can, of course, see it in your bank account, but then there's a wealth that is different. This wealth is the quality of the experience as it endures through the space-time continuum. So what I'm telling you is that there have been many moments where we're not perfect creatures. They say to err is to be human. That means it's very normal to make mistakes. What's not normal is to not make mistakes. Do you know? That means we shouldn't be judging people who are, in some sense, making mistakes. We should be judging the ones who are not, because the nature starts from imperfection, or at least a model that cannot be perfected, and it's being perfected as time moves on. For me, I can tell you that I found myself drawn not to warfare, not to war, but the mind behind war. And what that means is there was a time where I did not feel I want to participate in my moment of being. I was just standing in my inner realms, just this shy, silent kid. Even when people ask me, what do you want? I remember somebody asked me something once, And I was like, kinda. And the person's like, what do you mean, kinda? So there was such uncertainty of even care, uncertainty with my inner realms in my youth that I didn't even care. Do you know? I didn't care even to speak. Now I care. Now I realize, all right, we're here once. But there was a time where I had totally disconnected the value I could potentially find in the external realm by just based on few experiences diminishing the whole thing. So I feel actually we don't know enough as human beings to be stressed or depressed. We just find ourselves in states of mind where a character is not efficiently moving in a story. So if you think you're a certain, this is why you see so many, I can say they're kind-hearted people, but they end up being kind of these celebrities that they can't let go of an image of themselves. Do you know? I think in this life it's good to get embarrassed sometimes. In my youth I got embarrassed a couple times. I've gotten, actually when I think about it, it's like life's kind of trained me, it desensitized me to the opinion of the crowd a little, because I've seen so much. Even though I've lived so little, but I'm telling you, I've seen so much in that little bit of living. Some moments in your life, you witness certain things happening that they just reveal the nature of how your eyes are moving. You know, so really, the balance between heaven and earth is this suggestion that yes, in certain monotheistic traditions, we see hell or heaven. Don't do this, you'll go somewhere bad. Don't do this, you'll go somewhere good, right? But there is also this view where there is no hell. There is just the visible and the invisible. There is the earth bound, and then there's the heaven bound. You know. So in some sense, it becomes this transition from this model of heaven and hell to more this model of how is your individual objective phenomena moving while it is collectively, subjectively being observed. So I am telling you, it's like the balance between heaven and earth is witnessing your whole moment in the dimensions of its intelligence. Because really, this heaven and earth, the best way I found to kind of share it with people is that earth is your body. That means as long as you care for the body, you care for the planet. There's no saying that an eternal being, if there is any sort of continuity beyond the veil of sensory perception as a being, there's no saying that being is going to care for Earth. You care where you are, usually. Do you know? So, Savu, welcome. So, Savu says you should make shorts, videos, max 10 minutes with your ideas and ideas taken from books and other stuff. Of course, you can also do. Yeah, man, here's the thing. It's like this. It's like you write a sentence. This is what I feel it is. You write a sentence at first, then you're writing it. Usually the first things a person does, they're not doing it for themselves because they haven't discovered their true self in the art form. So it's as if like a person deciding to become a writer, and this person every day writes one sentence. After a while, the person doesn't think about the sentence anymore. They don't think about how their hand is holding the pen. As you experientially tunnel through your craft, you will eventually open up to different dimensions of it. That's the whole point of practice, to kind of see different dimensions. For me, I realized that I have prioritized, anytime I've prioritized my external, my outer realms over my inner realms, I can rationalize myself out of speech. It's very easy to doubt yourself. What's hard is the opposite. To trust yourself, to trust that the self is there is something there. it's kind of like you are doing something mechanically, then after a while it becomes like right now, if somebody asks you to move an object on a table, you have no problem. But when you were a little kid and your hand couldn't hold the object, you couldn't move the object. So many things that seem complex or challenging eventually will be simple, but sometimes the simple is not worth the complexity. Do you know? Because you see, it's kind of like a picture, at least the way I see it when I give these talks. Every word I'm saying, I am kind of drawing an image in the silence. So strangely, when you do the action for the artwork, you dive into it more. When you do it for others, you filter it. And I've realized, because I'm alive once, I tend to just, I tend to kind of keep things respectful in the talk, but there is this notion that some things that we've never talked about, we will never know who we will be until we talk about them. So for me, it's about trying to get as much content and to kind of make this inner vision into a film. You know, when I say a film, that means like when you listen to someone, it's kind of like reading a book without your eyes. You know. But Sabu, from a viewpoint, I would agree with you. If I was really keen on finishing the 10,000 talks quickly, yeah, the shorter the talk is, the better. But when you go for the content, it's different because then there is an image, inner image you have to stay loyal to. Life is so incredible. It is definitely, there is a balance element to it, but it is not just per se a balance of just of a physical elemental nature. It is a balance of how matter moves in itself, in its own mind. That means if we take your name away and we take language away, like who are you as a being? You're just a being. You see, you're just a phenomena being. But it is with the language that we crystallize ourselves into characters with specific characteristics. An extraterrestrial species can look. I don't know how to say it, guys. Sometimes you become a witness of how your own hand holds the brush, then you lose your opinions on the moment. It's fascinating. I can tell you that in my childhood, there was a fear with things suddenly being taken away. Then I think it was like a year ago, I had an experience, guys, which it was the most empty-handed experience of my life. It was a moment where I noticed as if all my ideologies are like kind of like dust on my shoulder, and this what do you call it, this wind. I feel that, if that day comes where it's my, I'm piloting out of this plane of existence. For me, I see my, this is, of course, every person dresses their mind differently, but I dress it through the wind element. Guys, let me tell you a secret I understood early on. No, it's not really a secret, but it was like something about work that I understood, and I really understood it through the context of writing. But then I realized it's universal. And what that idea was, that I don't know who said it, but there was this quote I read, it transformed my life as a writer. It said, write the book you want to read. So when you write something that fascinates yourself, it most likely will fascinate others. And it may not. Right now, there could be theoretical physicists writing the most complex theories, and there could be like these extraterrestrials in our clouds. It's like, look at these silly kids scribbling. So I'm saying that you can always see greater context. This is why Salvador Dali said, "Do not fear perfection. You will never reach it." So where does that leave you? Only output, only expression. So to attempt an action is better than no action. Do you know? And honestly, it's kind of strange, guys, because when a person gives a talk, they have no idea how it's going to go into the ears of others. So they say, when you give out your artwork, it is no longer your artwork. The eyes of others begin owning its meaning. And so at that point, it's kind of a strange relationship where it's as if I can tell you with some of my writing, some of the books I've written, some of the concepts I've developed, I have strangely a caretaker relationship with that idea. I can tell you that sometimes in my inner realms, ideas are alive. It's kind of very simple to actually observe, because right now, are you not a moment of life identifying as thought? I am realizing we can use language as an attributeless field. I feel this is the case. It's not mainstream now, but I feel there will come a time where we'll be like, whoa, could the depth of our sight of all beings be the same moment? There could be a potential, who knows? Who knows? All consciousness could be drops in an ocean, or they could be icebergs in an ocean, who knows? The external realm is kind of nice. It's like the filtration process. That means so many people, they want the world to listen to their inner realms. And what I mean by that is that I remember in my youth, if I wanted something, and I had this kind of weird mentality where if something didn't happen the way I had understood it, it would upset me. But then I realized it's one of the joys of life to be able to see another thing. To see what other flowers there are in the garden of existence, as the Sufis would say. There is a level of care that I feel breeds enough patience for the new idea to enter. That means it's like a person waking up and asking themselves what has been set in motion. And they will most likely access their memory field. The relationship with the object becomes sequentially, multidimensionally, but a subject is not sequential, it's evocational. So that means there has been talks where I've come to speak like A, B, C, D. Then suddenly from B, I see B1, B2, B3, B4, B5. So suddenly it's like the concept stretches. There's this kind of, I can say it's like this playful hypothesis that I had, that really from the voice box, there's a subject, like it's as if the brain stores the images, the alphabet. The soul is in the throat. The voice box moves. Okay, let me see how I can say it to you. I feel like in the future, if we develop a hologram, and this hologram is projecting light and the shape, I feel where the person's forehead is projecting something when you think. And so many people might judge me on this, it's fine, but when you put your palm on your forehead, it changes the speed of your inner realms. So there is something with maybe our foreheads in another dimension being our imagination. I don't know. It's a hypothesis, of course. But of course, guys, I am a graduate of Toronto Film School, so hopefully followers of this channel will see some of my films in the future. For me, it's about, here, let's get to the core of the talk. Visionary victories. Sun Tzu in The Art of War spoke about a balance between heaven and earth, and that means your victory, or the victory of the implementation of whatever effort is found in your vision, has to do with an awareness to the world first. That means Sun Tzu in The Art of War, the main thing he's saying is that there is an intelligence to this world, and the general that abides by the intelligence endures. And this picture, which it seems to be drawn by a person named WLOP, it's an incredible picture because the moment I saw this picture, you see in this beautiful character's eyes vision. She is observing nature's unknown movement. That's the fascination of reality. I feel that we have to return to nature, but it's not returning to nature like going back in the forests and living in like camping our whole lives. It's returning to our inner nature. Our inner nature doesn't mean it's like you gotta be like a tree. It means that there is a resonance, your conscious activity based, your DNA is a tuning fork. And when you're stressed or turbulent, I say, you, in some sense, the tuning fork is vibrating between multiple dimensions, so the person has multiple views on one thing and is not sure what is reality. But when the tuning fork stops, when your DNA finds itself to be okay, that means I can tell you the unleashment of the greatest power is that the recognition that you were okay from the beginning. So many people don't realize, unless you accept how you are in all ways, you will in some sense not do your work. So there's like see it as if like, for me, I'm not seeing creatures here, like the hedonistic lifestyle, I can totally see it is valuable to the inner realm. But the only point of us having outer realms and having mysterious inner realms is for the inner realms to be communicated in the outer realms. I feel man is a creature destined for communication. Matter turned into a subject to itself that could question itself. There's no mysterious evolution than that. And what I dislike about the educational system, there's many things I like about it, but the list of dislikes is longer. And what I dislike is that they are, by forcing the future generations to regurgitate answers, making the future generations dislike asking questions. Let me tell you, you are as intelligent as the questions you ask, not the answers you have. Your intelligence is based on what questions you are aware that still haven't been answered. Let me tell you what I feel the archetype of justice does in the face, how an archetype of, or like some situations can become so chaotic. you'll feel like that moment is a Titanic and you'll leave the moment. I can't tell you how many moments in my life I've literally dwelled in a moment, or it's been with a conversation and I've just realized it's like both my attention is somewhere else and that other person's attention is somewhere. It's like, why are we even talking? So there are many moments that you will attempt perfection, but it doesn't mean perfection comes. But let me tell you who will be energized by their own attempts throughout the day. We have this mentality, all right, we sleep, we get energy like a battery, phone battery becomes charged, then we live and the energy gets used. Let me tell you, sure, that's one way to health. Another way to health is doing activities that create energy. And I will tell you, the most energetic people on this earth, or any human being, you will instantly become healthy if you make life important for you. That is the secret. Those who care are welcomed. Those who don't fade. And I can tell you, there is no greater force that can heal the human being. Is this still on? There's no greater force that can heal the human being than the vision that the mind was untouched. That there is something in this moment that has opened its eyes now. The greatest performance of the lifetime. It's as if like that moment where death came to that person and death said it's time. It's time to go. And the person roared. He shouted at death, how dare you not see? The work of the living still remains. And so death in that moment is like, all right, this guy's busy, I'll come back later. And of course, guys, I'm being playful on a mythological level, but I'm telling you that life is really not just an opportunity to physically move, but also an opportunity for your inner realms to move. That's the grandest part. That in this world of ours, there is something to do. And I have looked at it. You know how many times I have walked in civilization wondering, why are you here, civilization? And what I've come to realize is that we're just, again, like this is the simplest thing. Tell this to people and you'll see the species heal. Because we are. We are eyes that have opened after 4 billion years. Who can judge you, really? If they want to judge you, you can tell them, judge my ancestor. Then they go back to judge your ancestors. Your ancestors, imagine, through time travel technology, we went back, your ancestors says, don't judge me, judge my ancestors. And everybody's saying, judge my ancestors. Eventually, we're judging bacteria under the sea for why the world is so messed up now. I am telling you guys, there is... So welcome Plugaro, and thank you, peace, love, dove. I feel this picture represents your name. So Plugaro, this is, I don't know guys, this is just a wallpaper website where I find these, but this was the tag. So I think that's the artist. You search that, you will see the pictures of the artist. Bless the artist, whoever it is. Sometimes I can tell you that a picture doesn't speak, it's not like 1,000 words, it's like 1,000 years ahead of time. Because, let me tell you, in mathematics we have the common denominator, the concept of the common denominator. That means when you reduce the various individuals, what do they come down to? And I am telling you, when you reduce the physical body, it comes down to how the attention, how the free will moves around. So I am telling you, the greatest sort of mystical sort of I don't know how to tell you. You realize that your eyes have no shape and color, and then you realize the infinite allowance of shape and color. So the person feels like a field moving what the content. Like there was a time I felt I was just the body and all the objects in the room were not in my, like I didn't care. But then I realized there is peripheral vision. So right now you even have access to your peripheral vision, but you're not conscious of it. So think about how much you know, but based on the archetype or egoic construct or who you think you are, you just don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? That means you as a being think of the brain as a very sophisticated, advanced recording mechanism. It's just been like a vacuum sucking in sensory perception. Now, all this sensory perception, isn't it strange that the soul seems to be the center of gravity for the senses? That all our sensory perception is something is happening to it, then it's being us. So there's a level of pure being. Really, when you judge another person, you're judging atoms that mysteriously are animate. I think in this talk, guys, we have eradicated judgment. Really, again, going back to this balance between heaven and earth, you can think of heaven as all the dreams you have in life. And you can think of earth as what you're left with. You know, our minds are living in higher dimensions. This is why our inner realms are way more abundant. That means I have closed my eyes and managed to, in my inner realms, walk on a giant eagle's back, where that eagle's wings were so long that it was endless. And then I used that idea for a science fiction because it was accessible in my inner realms. When you care for something, that means you're seeing something long term in it, really. And I am telling you, wealth has to do in today's society with data. It's fascinating, really. I think in 100 years, children, it will be strange to them to live a day without being in a virtual simulation of reality. Right now, the virtual reality simulation is strange, but there will be a day where children will be like, oh my God, look at these old people not using, virtual reality to live another life, And I'm telling you, the whole point of the soul, you can say, believe it or not, all these mystics, all these yogis, all wisdom traditions where they've renounced all those traditions where you find in that tradition they're saying don't do this, there it will eventually be seen kind of like it's an illusion. So they are treating life like a dream. So I am saying life is a dream is the same feeling you will have if you were in a cyberspace virtual reality simulation of life. Like there's some movies about it, you see that it's like the character is like this simple kid, but in the virtual reality machine he's like this complex juggernaut, So that's what I'm saying. If we are becoming a civilization that is identifying with what's happening, we have a choice to make that very digital and we have a choice to keep it natural. But here's the situation. Let's think of both extremes. Is this, I hope this isn't on mute. Okay, so. Imagine, or as Terence McKenna so elegantly says, cast your mind to a time where there is no technology. Think about what you would do, what you would expect, what you would want, how you would communicate, how would you care for the archetype of others if there was no technology. Now think of a reality where there's only technology, and my kind of philosophical vision of this is that the civilization will get bored. There is something, we should call it a law. It's called the law of too much repetition gets boring and we die inside. That means there has to be a new attempt, or the person doesn't feel that their day is different from yesterday. At least for me. Me as a human being, there has to be something I do throughout the day that surprises me. If I don't do something that surprises myself, it's as if the self is like, what are you doing with your life? You know? I am telling you, we are utilizing language, or the mind is processing, the brain. Okay, your stomach digests food, your brain digests the new. I am telling you, this is why people love vacations, because they suddenly enter a new environment, and when you enter a new environment, you in some sense feel a different person. Do you know? I am telling you, you think all the presidents in the history of the world, of all countries, who have gone on a podium and spoken, you think they felt like how they felt in the shower when they were alone? No, they felt different because the world is different. Do you know? And I feel that after some point of looking, like, let me tell you, it's all about how the mind is like this world generator biomechanism, this biological world creator, but the worlds are deviations of reality, which we call imagination. Now, this imagination, its expression, like these words that I'm telling you right now, like how is this transmission of me as a creature in one corner of the world making a sound, and you as another creature in a corner of the world suddenly having that sound to have meaning? Do you see, the transmission is literally the same way that you read ink on a paper, but you're just reading sound on the silence when you listen. You know, when you read, you're in some sense seeing ink on an empty page, and so speech is sound in the silence. That's when listening, the joy of listening, opens up. For most people, and I think pretty much the way civilization is designed for the youth, they don't want to listen, you know? But let me tell you, listening doesn't mean deciding, doesn't mean doing the same. Listening means you see what's in the room fully, then. So you don't know, sometimes when I kind of have researched philosophers on my own time, you know, it has been a sort of, I didn't care for that guy's philosophy. I just knew that I saw the world in a certain way, and this philosopher saw the world in a certain way, and then I asked myself, what was the difference? And really, you have to keep yourself as the main topic. So I feel the educational system will eventually in the future change into one where it will be like, how would I say it? It's like children. They must realize that they will look through many eyes, not just who they think they are. You know, the seed in the soil started crying, you know? And the sun was like, why are you crying, seed? And the seed was like, I'm alone in the darkness and it's dirty everywhere. And the sun was like, oh, seed, what? Don't cry, because your time will come. One of the greatest lessons of war I got, guys, was from a movie, and I don't know if the movie was called Genghis Khan or Attila, I don't know, or Mogul, I think it was called Mogul. Now, in this film, there was a scene. For me, what fascinated me about film and stories is character development, because I kind of realized everybody's in a story of love, their own life. We in some sense are subconsciously typing the story of our life, and that's why we enter a moment and there's this conscience. The conscience means you subconsciously have already processed the environment. That means your unconscious mind has an opinion on the moment. But your conscious mind doesn't have an opinion. And when your conscious mind does something and it deviates from the opinion of your unconscious or subconscious mind, let's say your deeper mind, beyond the sensory, then you feel like, oh man, I'm guilty, or oh man, I did the wrong thing, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. We have to inject the civilization with the most advanced questions. And I am telling you, do not be afraid of the questions, the colossal questions that our species eventually has to walk towards. What does that mean? That means life is all about treasure revealing. The day is a strange gift to the void. Sometimes I'm like, what if in some sense I think all of life, it's like I'm this transmigrating ethnocentric soul, you know? Imagine, like some Buddhists perceived it as such, that you're like eternity lost in a temporary loop. An inconceivable eternity though. This is why in Buddhism, emptiness or the awareness of emptiness is the same profoundness that in monotheistic traditions they find when they try to imagine the creator. You see, you cannot. This is why, so when you cannot imagine the creator, in some sense, in your attempt to do so, you open up to behaviors and patterns. For me, everything is very systematic. And if we really wanted to study something, we would have to be considerate of deeper dimensions. So what would that mean? That means the external dimensions become a very polite and advanced state. That means, let me tell you, languages evolve. Did you know that? And sometimes I've asked myself, imagine the first year they printed the first dictionary ever, And then some philosophers came and said, wait a second, how would language evolve? That would mean that every day we have to create a dictionary with new words, more words, more words, more words, more words, more words. That means every living human being right now can go have an experience that is not defined in the dictionary and create a word for it. That's open space. That's pretty much what the joy the philosopher had, that regardless of the outer circumstance, the inner circumstance, there are simulations that work. You can work in certain simulations. Or simulated states of realism. So, you, dear listener, me and you are I say right now, don't think we're in just everything's cool and everybody knows everything. Right now, we are in the battlefields of the language wars. That means as long as a civilization is still caught on worshipping language, it can't advance beyond that. Literally, if your attention, it's like if a person doesn't want to get up the chair, you can't really pull them, So what that means is people have to, this is what I realized all those, noob gurus did. You see, it's not about one idea to encompass everything. You have to give language a freedom. You gotta treat communication like nature. It took me a while to realize that I was caring about nature, but I was not communicating naturally. This is why when I would do PowerPoint presentations in my youth, I would just like literally go into some inner paralysis, but then somehow, with a rhythmic kind of like I'll give you an example. Like I had to do this PowerPoint presentation on Dante's Inferno for this writing class in my high school, and and it was strange because the teacher was sick, so there was this camera. So that was actually the first time I was in front of camera, And so I had to explain Dante's Inferno in front of the camera, if I remember correctly. And when I was explaining it, I the parts that I didn't know what to say, I remember I had brought, it was like a prop comedy effect where I had this bottle of water, and in the middle of my pauses I would just take a sip and then put down the cup and then suddenly take another sip and then put down, but eventually I got through it. So that was a situation where I didn't understand, like I still hadn't realized the value of listeners. That was a point where most people, when they talk, they don't realize their nervousness is not coming from others, being in front of others. Their nervousness is coming from how they would feel, how they are imagining they would feel if the aftermath would be. So this is why the most purest way to speak is in the present. Because the value is there. It's if somebody comes and tells me, it's like, what are you saying? I'll be like, hey man, I'm just a being here. Like, what do you want me to say? This is how far my eyes see. So I'm telling you, I don't know if this relates to Alan Watts' concept of irreducible rascality, but I don't think I wouldn't say it's that. I would say it's more like a simplicity. So guys, I can see the chat section is booming. Honestly, I just feel there was an art. I kind of got shocked. Back in the day, they said people would speak in verse, you know? And what that would mean that the ancient world had access to intelligent rhythms. That means the logos, the inner guiding voice that the ancient Greeks saw moving all thought in the minds of man. Do you know? They could see gods back in the day. But today, ever since Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead and man killed him, man, by killing God, killed his ability to wonder if the world could have a personality. Do you see? It's honestly, for me, it's just the most advanced technologies in the civilization dictate the ideology of the civilization. You know? What that means is, for example, all those people printing Tibetan Buddhist books, the moment they got access to the printing press, it's like, sure, tradition has one angle, but on another level, like the technology of modernity defines us. Do you know? And technology was always fascinating for me, guys. I can't tell you how I think many people are like this, how movies sculpt the emotions for our desires. And what I think is there's no such thing as an intelligent person. There is an intelligent moment where the personality is animate. That means in that model, silence is intelligent. We can have Albert Einstein, sneaking in to a sort of like physics class. Let's say he shaved his face and he shaved his like hair, and he just, somehow with a hat, like came into some place and he was listening to people speak about physics, space-time. And imagine the creator of space-time listening, sneaking and eavesdropping on people speaking about his creation. He would probably see that the value of his creation is much grander. So when everything that I have ever created in this life, there was something more that I saw in the inner realms that outweighed the outer realms, and that's why the creative act took place. So I feel we are all creative, it's just that we don't all trust that we can be ourselves and it's going to be okay. And being yourself doesn't mean it's a shape. It doesn't mean you look in the mirror and that one snapshot photo of who you were in that space-time, in that moment in space, in the space-time continuum is you. No, you are a growing being. So that means every idea you've ever had is growing alongside in accordance to every experience that just stretches the horizons for you. So, guys, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Let's see. So let's see what our homie Sun Tzu has to say. Let's see what the artist of war, or let's see how the artist of war moved this brush. Okay, here, let me actually read his bio first. The Art of War is an ancient Chinese military treatise. Okay, wait, let's read Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu was a Chinese general, military strategist, writer, and philosopher who lived in the Eastern Zhou period of ancient China. Sun Tzu is traditionally credited as the author of The Art of War, an influential work of military strategy that has affected both Western and Eastern Asian philosophy and military thinking. His works focus much more on alternatives to battle, such as stratagem. So it's like this, such as stratagem, 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 and anyways, the use of spies and alternatives to war itself, the making and keeping of alliances, the uses of deceit, and a willingness to submit, at least temporarily, to more powerful foes. Sun Tzu is revered in Chinese and East Asian culture as a legendary historical and military figure. His birth name was Sun Wu, and he was known outside of his family by his courtesy name Chunkin. The name Sun Tzu, by which he's best known in the Western world, is an honorific which means master son. So his name means master son. So you can see he was pretty much like if the son was a military general. So let me find Art of War quotes. He speaks of this balance between heaven and earth, and Moryo Shiva says witnessing the soul, witnessing how the soul of heaven and earth moves as the ultimate state. Moryo Shiva, the founder of Aikido, says that. Alright, the 26 best quotes from Art of War. Sun Tzu, rewards for good service should not be deferred a single day. Sun Tzu says, do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite variety of circumstances. In that sentence, guys, is the same thing pretty much Da Vinci says. You know? Treat your men as an approach to the polymath mind. Treat your men as you would your own beloved sons, and they will follow you into the deepest valley. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby, you can be the director of the opponent's fate. And you know what that means? That means the invisible has the advantage first. Sun Tzu, guys, this military general, he's speaking about war in a multidimensional reality. Sun Tzu is probably the founder of our interstellar military tactics in the future. You know? His ideology of governance of the dimension. Anyway, Sun Tzu says, thus the expert in battle moves the enemy and is not moved by him. That means, that's very true. That means your presence knows itself or is comfortable with itself. And because your presence is comfortable with itself, it cannot be reduced. Who can reduce the inner eyes? When you realize no human being can touch your mind, that's when Neo has already bended the spoon. So another way of interpreting Sun Tzu's quote is like, the person should move life and not be too much moved by life. Or let me say it like in a sense where you trust what you do. Sun Tzu says the wise warrior avoids the battle. Yeah, this is so true. You know how many inefficient, like think of it this way. Everything you do throughout the day, it takes energy, and the activity of course can create energy itself. For example, the activity of eating, you're losing energy to gain energy in that instant, you know? So we can kind of say it's like everything has a cost, energy, an energetic cost. As we as human beings, like we're not plugged to electricity, you know, we're like, we have a certain energy throughout the day. That means the human being gets tired. Like in 2015, when I was in the UK, I was attempting to break my own record of how many talks I could give in a day. And I remember I reached like 10, you know? And each talk kind of takes a certain energetic part of you, you know, but only when the idea becomes important, the energy needed becomes so second nature assumed. Like think of it this way, in an emergency, you're not a philosopher, you're running. Do you know? So what does that mean? That means no person, any person who can discriminate between two things being important and another being less important is sane. In all psychological analysis, Mr. Within is recommending to, you know, psychologists that, let me tell you, the human being is a building process. So you can see the worst human being, but then be like, whoa, this guy there is a potential algorithm that this human being can suddenly make like maybe 5 great decisions and totally be a different person. So that different person means that we live through the past, but we are not the past if we are to be alive tomorrow. So the action of living is kind of like how the self is being created. So how you live, and the Stoics understood this. You know, Epictetus says, we suffer not from the events in our lives. We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. That means you don't actually suffer when something physically happens to you. I'm not talking about the suffering of biological pain. I'm saying like, let's say, like your I don't know, your ice cream cone, like the ice cream falls down on the ground. Okay? You can suffer, but you can also see that that was just an event. That was just atoms from the cone falling to the ground, particles. So the upset is your storytelling. And I'm telling you, you're a storyteller in your life. Your whole name and personality and who you think you are is your ability to see how far you see in your own story. And when you realize as a being, Mr. Within is saying this, like when you're not a thought, you observe thoughts. It doesn't mean there's no ideas. It's that for the first time you can have ideas without having to grip the idea like a savage blind man. You know? So, for example, Isaac Asimov says violence is the last refuge of the incompetent, similar to how Sun Tzu says the wise warrior avoids the battle. So that means all those people who are violent, they have not found a way to, without moving, without wasting the energy of the fight, to solve the problem through speech. Like there's a reason we have minds, so we don't punch each other all day like savage animals. You know, so you know, a lot of life is about communication. Any person you've had, let's say, a bad relationship with, I can tell you this, guys. When you realize you're not a thought, you realize they aren't either, and suddenly your enemies eradicate. The concept of an enemy doesn't make sense anymore because you don't have that person's eyes to even know who they are to consider them an enemy. So after some point, it's like where your attention is where where your ship is being steered towards. Sun Tzu says, begin by seizing something which your opponent holds dear. Then he will be amendable to your will. Yeah, basic business negotiation leverage. Yeah. So yeah, this is something cruel because I see, I don't know, maybe it's important, but there was how can I tell you? Like I've had friends who some of these friends they're um anyways, I had this friend, his approach to picking up chicks was by going in and offending them. And it was this weird thing where, just like Sun Tzu says, you take something from someone and then their attention falls on you, you know? And I felt like that's savage because human beings will do that all the time, you know? And when civilized and advanced civilization would make that more playful. You know, it's like I remember the best thing I heard. This is the best relationship advice I've heard. Okay, it was written on a marriage card, on a card. Like there was this marriage happening I was attending, and there were cards on the table, and people wrote different comments for the groom and bride. For the groom, the groom and bride, the groom and bride, guys. And what was that advice? You know, keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. That was a funny moment, guys. You know, I'll never forget. You know, sometimes you read something somewhere and it just like you'll remember it forever. It's just too real. Oh my God, is this being heard? Yes. Yes, but welcome to the chat, Modesta. Thanks for sharing. So you say so we are more like mobile phones which need charging. Yes, but you can also charge yourself by an activity. Like I'm giving you an example. For example, when you eat food, that's an activity that is energizing. Like it takes energy to eat food. There's energetic costs, but then you're also getting that cost back based on what you eat. And when the human being, in some sense, does something important, it energizes them. Hope energizes you. It may, kind of sound like popcorn, you know, a bit corny, but like I'm telling you, hope is like, it's the potential of a parallel reality that can be actualized. So I'm telling you, artists are smart because they are trying to focus their endeavors so that some activity that has a value to them. So check this out. You think that kid, flipping burgers and like that fast food place, that kid is feeling energized? No, he's literally having the heat hit his forehead and be like, what am I doing with my life, right? It's not that I'm diminishing that role. I'm just saying that a human being, most people, Alan Watts said this, if you can get if you can find if you can make your work into play, you won't get tired doing it because it's adding dimensions to you. Sometimes there's no one to come and lift you up from the curb, and you just gotta be like, okay, how long am I gonna stay in the inefficient program? So for me, I feel like ancient morality, good versus evil. Oh no, modern morality sees that good and evil. This is through my own school of thought. See the modern morality for civilization 2.0, even for the before, way before the arrival of civilization 2.0, as I've envisioned. It's going to be a morality that is not seeing the story, is looking, the morality is like, all right, we're all temporary travelers on a rock in the middle of nowhere, so our morality should be what is the most efficient experience for all the human beings. That means when I thought about it, you see, guys, right now, the economy is setting people to build giant nets and try to catch giant fish. That means pretty much if you see the economical system through the metaphor of fishing, everybody's trying to fish and get a big fish. But we can totally create a civilization where resources can meet. I remember I was walking once downtown Toronto, and I just in my inner realm, saw another version of those streets. I first of all saw the buildings are so geometrically fascinating and stretched out, and I saw that human beings, we're not at a level, it will be a sort of, think of it this way. We will define ourselves as an advanced civilization when we can handle advanced modes of being. That's it. That means, think of it this way. If you can't confront, if you can't feel okay in one dimension, in this plane of existence, don't try to go to other dimensions. It's like telling all those, it's strange. It's like an ancient, I don't know, it's an ancient pattern. It's just an ancient pattern, and it's like this structure, it's like the pyramids of thought. I don't understand why Spotify is offline right now. Okay. Alright, guys, alright, whatever. We have to consider it that if we can't care for the new, we'll be lost in the past. And that's my intent with these talks. They're kind of I don't know, how I take my mind to the gym for the day. There's something, human beings will eventually be defined by work, but they will be defined by the infinite potential of their work. That means you really don't care about work unless you want to build something. And so this is I think the true testament to the independence of vision that you as a human being have. That you realize, all right, this world that I'm seeing, I'm the only one who's seeing it. Unless you choose to communicate, nobody gets to see. Like if I didn't give these talks, who would I be to you? So you see that it's in some sense I just feel we're multidimensional beings that have lingered too long and have gotten bored with a singular view of society, and we should attempt to build a yin-yang civilization where chaos and order refuel each other. So I was thinking a way of getting rid, bringing world peace doesn't mean making the people stop being as intense as they would be if they were violent. It's just that we, for example, make that violence virtual. That's why the gaming system is, the gaming world is unbelievable. At first I thought, I was born in 1991. I can tell you that if there was a museum of gaming consoles, I was there at the beginning. I was that kid playing that first gaming console in the music, that old school Sega console. I had that as a kid. So I can tell you that for me, it started from being a meaningless activity, just a leisure activity, and then I realized what is the bigger picture? It's that human beings are realizing that through a digital means they can have an effect of their deepest desires. They can cause their deepest desires without a consequence. So that kid in the video game, like it's crazy. Some of these streamers are making like 300K a year or something. It's remarkable. And so this all even relates to simulation theory. We are becoming such masters of our objective realm that we are creating ourselves in it or attempting to. That's the point of making AI conscious. We prove to ourselves that we are the gods of the worlds we know about. Because really, guys, the concept of nothing is very unfathomable. I can tell you that I have wondered if emptiness is just one side of the coin. That in every moment of my life that I felt I wasn't there, the world still was. And I feel it's all about all those people who are looking for their soul. You're gonna eventually realize it's the direction of the world. There is nothing greater, and I remember I named it an incredible concept. I even have intentions of like probably starting a YouTube channel where I'm using a whiteboard and talking a lot about geometry and design. So the name of that would be The Winds of Evolution. And that's because that's how my intuition, I feel, has been. It's like the conscious winds of evolution. Now is our time. Now we're alive. Every person alive listening to me in 2020, we are right now in such a unique phase because imagine an explosion is going to happen in the year 2050 that's going to transform everything. So right now we are prior to this technological revolution, and what we have to evolve is the user of technology. Right now we're like, Muhammad Ali and punching a punching bag. You know what I mean? Like we're in training. Right now I don't feel we are even a proper species yet. You know? We right now we don't even see the species, like fish in the ocean. Somehow they all unite and to scare like bigger fish, like all these smaller fish unite. But human beings, they're still like, no man, I'm gonna I'm this like imagine if all of life's economical resources were buffets. Was like all you can eat buffet. They're just people holding their hands on it. They're like, no, the lettuce is mine. Or like, the person's like, no, I have my hands on the chicken or like the beef. Some person owns the beef, and unless you're a citizen of that country, you can't eat beef. You know what I mean? Like, it's too much. It's like, that's why I'm saying Civilization 2.0 is an effort for us to distance ourselves from how our ignorance is the problem. That means technically if all human beings started to make efficient decisions, and not efficient which is a win for them and a lose for their civilization. It has to be a win for you and a win for civilization, and I'm telling you that algorithm is the perfect mindset for work. You will be opened. I'm telling you, in one of my writings, something that came early on, one of the first sentences, not first, but like one of the early sentences, was your work works with you. There was a time I was entertaining an archetype behind my eyes, and I called it Astra. I have given names but not faces. That's too noob to give faces to. That's noob metaphysics, guys, to imagine a story behind a dimension that could totally be different than this. That means man shouldn't think he can understand the greater dimensions, but he must consider that he may evolve into them or remember himself back then. So vision and victory and their blend. And I'll read a few more quotes from Sun Tzu. And if the viewers are interested, I'll open it up to Q&A. Sun Tzu says, if soldiers are punished before they have grown attached to you, they will not prove submissive. And unless submissive, then will be practically useless. If when the soldiers have become attached to you, punishments are not afforded, they will still be useless. So guys, let me tell you why. Because there was a savage time. Like, let me tell you, generals, you gotta give them a break when you read their quotes from like a couple hundred years after they've died, you know? Let me tell you why, you know? Because back in the day, the team won. And people their personalities were not that sophisticated to become mindful of collective truths. So you can say the military had no choice but to erase the program of the person's identity and to project a stronger mentality that can endure, you know? So for me, it's like, I can tell you, and it's not that the personality gets erased, it's just that the military is giving people psychological Iron Man suits. And I think that's a good thing. For me, the military of a nation should be wise. And a military is wise when it realizes that it's unnecessary. Do you know? So what that means is it's kind of like a person building, like designing, like imagine someone just creating 1,000, like, of a new kind of a hair dryer. Do you know? Now this person will look at these objects every day and be like, why did I build this? Why is this phenomenon here? And so the more money that is spent on military funding is another way of saying the more the governance will wonder, why is it here? And so it will be this strange situation where we will either melt everything into a giant pot of molten metal, like all militaries will return, or into just pure state of metal. Let me tell you, we are multidimensional beings, and we are in a multidimensional system. But this multidimensional system, because it's multidimensional, has no choice to acknowledge you as a human being in a singular way. Therefore, really, we are actually, communication is the evocation of a linguistic simulation. Sun Tzu says, ponder and deliberate before you make a move. Ponder and be deliberate before you make a move. Or deliberate. Yeah, I don't know, there's something off the code. Sun Tzu says the whole secret lies in confusing the enemy so that he cannot fathom our real intent. And guys, this is so crucial in chess. You know, I have this, uncle, atheist uncle, and he was a man who played chess with 3 people with his eyes closed. Like, he was memorized all the boards and he could remember every move he would make and even have space to fathom it, you know? So I asked him I only once on the airplane, on the chess game of the airplane, managed to beat him once in chess. But that was when he made a mistake that was like, I could totally say it was like jet lag. Like, I only won him when he was won him in chess when he was jet lagged. But in my defense, I was jet lagged too, you know. But he told me something he does in chess, which I found phenomenal, which is pretty much the same thing Sun Tzu is here. In chess, if your opponent is onto what you're doing, sometimes you do a move that is meaningless. Sometimes you do a move that's meaningless. And when you do that move that's meaningless, it makes it a way where the person you're playing chess with has no idea what you're doing, so they suddenly bunker into their certainty. So then you are watching them in a way when you're playing chess. Like, the whole point of chess, like the way I would explain chess to people is like, Imagine the middle of a board, even though it's a flat board, but the middle of the board is upper ground. It's like a hill. So it's as if like two armies fighting for the hill, and the white pieces get the first chance to run at the hill. So imagine all the chess pieces as real soldiers on the battlefield. Now, how would you use the ability of each soldier? Because you would first have all soldiers are united by the recognition that the command of the chess player is the authority. So especially you might not realize it, but you're the chess master of your inner realms. When you realize that in the other, where it's like as if imagine whatever. Let's just fix this problem. You know, let's say you're a person. You think there are other creatures, other beings in other dimensions. Let's say you feel you have access. Let's say you feel you're communicating to entities beyond the veil of perception. Okay, now that entity, imagine you ask that entity, what is the secret of all? You know, and that entity said the secret of all is that I am not even this that you see me as. So it would be a hilarious situation where evolution is witnessing its another dimension of evolution and realizing they're both changing. What can you say? So the fact that human beings have managed to make language, static images, the way we have connected images and sped them up, that is knowledge. That is it. It's like there's light in the room and there's stuff seen, and every human being that has lived has raised their hand, and history has said speak, and they have said something. Sun Tzu says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Can we all slow hand clap for this legend? Like literal legend, Chinese legend. Wow. Okay, guys, thank you. Thank you, Salvu, Dragon, and Peace, Love, Dove, you know. My attention is just on, like, I kind of made this intent. If I do have abundance, I'm thinking of starting a school, pretty much like a school of advanced communication, and an attempt, if you were like a Lord of the Rings fan, at a wizardry school. But I don't see it as wizardry, I see it as piloting the attention of man through various conceivable dimensions and a massive unification of the various branches of knowledge, you know? So guys, I think, okay, here, there's one more quote I'll read. Sun Tzu says, bravery without forethought causes a man to fight blindly and desperately like a mad bull. Such an opponent must not be encountered with brute force, but may be lured into an ambush and slain. But guys, I am telling you, Sun Tzu is like this enlightened guy who had to be a military general. Because you see, all his tactics, this whole idea of the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. The enemy is fighting because they are seeing a picture in their inner realms. You change that picture, you're no longer enemies. And even though you might feel like an enemy, do you know it's something strange I'll tell you guys. In 2000, end of 2011, I had a dream. And in the dream, there was this, I don't know, I can't remember too much, but I remember the significance of the dream. And in the dream, it was as if I was being instructed to go and every person I had physically fought with. You know, because I was kind of in Iran, like how can I tell you, like, let me tell you, in third world countries, bullying doesn't exist because everybody assumes it's a battlefield. Do you know? You know, I wasn't as calm as I am now when I was younger. And you realize the mind can do things that the body is not built for. There is a beauty to speech. I can't tell you, it's divine. Like writing and speaking, that is like evolution, isn't it? Literally all our knowledge is kept through those two modes of approach. And let's read another one from Sun Tzu. He says, one may know how to conquer without being able to do it. I don't know, guys. I'll tell you this. I wrote a story and I called it A Conqueror Named Time. And there was this, I had created this great conqueror where his name was Chaos, this king. And he wondered what is a greater conqueror, and he named his son Time. So I made this story, I remember writing the story about this warlord, and this warlord, in some sense, his son, the warlord, his name is Chaos, right? So he's this, and it's a metaphor. Chaos is like the ultimate warlord. And then you see what is greater than chaos. So this king names his son Time, because time is the ultimate conqueror. And the king says that to his son before he dies. And the son, who is, imagine being the son of a warlord. Like, let me tell you, when you're the son of a warlord, you might be kind-hearted, but your kind-heartedness is still a few light years away from true kindness. That means you can't be around savageness and then feel gentle all the time. And that's the thing, guys. If you notice, the teacher can teach you only in the dualistic realm. The void is self-taught. The singular observance is self-taught. That means after some point, you'll realize how life is actually being a mirror of your own experiential value on existence. That means existence is not a simulation, but what existence means to us and what we think we are is a simulation. It's a simulation of how the attention is a spotlight for the sensory perception to have room to mean something else. So free will is an evolution of meaning. That means people cannot be, like the concept of judgment technically won't make sense because the new is coming. How can you judge the new when it hasn't arrived? So you can't judge every person's potential for novelty. So you can't judge yourself because you're going to experience a moment where you're going to see a different sense of self. That's it. I think this is that moment where the person who was recording depression statistics was like, oh wait. We don't have to, you can create endless fear, but you can also create endless advancement. I think there's no more beautiful word than the word advancement. For me, like, putting the word advanced in front of everything is the most incredible thing. Like, because then you wonder, imagine you're drinking a glass of water and then you suddenly wonder, what about advanced drinking of an advanced glass of water? Then your mind automatically invites the future in, And I feel that it's strange. I feel our bodies are going forward in time. Our minds are witnessing time. That's why we have to look at our watch to suddenly have the abstraction pop up again in our inner realms. Sometimes I'm telling you, a human being can sit in a present moment, and I'll tell you something hilarious. Imagine, I don't know if this test has been conducted in, psychology and just the study of the human being and even ontological focus points. Like, here guys, I'm going to tell you something. Imagine right now, you, the listener, or let's say, imagine a person A, a character. We put person A in a room. Now, person A is in that room. We put a box on the head of person A. Person A, let's say the box somehow is also they can't hear. Like, it's a box on their sensory perception. So person A is sitting on a chair in a room. Suddenly one person comes, or let's say person A, perfect example. Imagine person A sitting on a chair in a room. Person A picks up a box. They create a box with their intent. They just pick up a box and they put this box on their head. So person A has boxed their vision from the room. Okay? Now they have only boxed their sensory perception. Now let's say right the moment they put the box, the person A put the box in the room, person B, person C, person D, person E, person F, person G, all the letters in the alphabet ran in the room. All we suddenly had, let's say a bunch, let's limit it to like a few. So let's say person A puts the box on its head, suddenly person B and C and D come in the room, and person B and C and D come in the room, and they each start singing in their own unique voice. Okay? Now, right now, in this metaphor, in this thought experiment, let's just keep going, guys. So person B, C, and D are singing. Person A has seen nothing but starts hearing mysterious sounds in the room. Person A looks at himself and sees like, whoa, there's nothing here. You know, there's like, where are these sounds coming from? I'm just in a dark room. How could there be sounds? You know, person A doesn't realize that they're in the dark room. And let's say the moment they put the box, they forgot if they ever put it on. You know? Let's say the amnesia of reincarnation could suggest that in a Buddhist context. But so the person has put the box on. Now let's say the person can't explain. The person thinks, like if a psychologist came, asked person A, what's going on with your experience? Person A would say, I'm hearing voices, you know, but I can't see these voices. But the person B and C and D are in the room. This is a thought experiment. So imagine now person A with the box on their head, they have like those old school Bluetooth headphones. They have like a headphone like in their ear, and there's a voice in the ear that's asking them how's your experience, and person A is like, let's say the psychologist conducting this experiment is saying this. Now, it is so easy to look at person A and say, yo man, this guy's hearing voices from a room we can't hear, we can't see. Do you know? And person A may even believe. But what if that box must be taken off first? And that box is when your free will has, for some reason, something in this life pushed you too hard and you stop trying. And when you get over that kind of, you can say, thought structure, when you stop living, when you stop inhabiting in thoughts of weakness, for the first time you realize freedom of speech means you have an ability to be strong. That's the whole point of it. That means language is like a lightsaber. You know, you can use it with a red glow or you can use it with a green glow. Or if you're like a jazz singer, maybe use it with a blue glow, you know, classic blues, you know. So guys, treat your thought as a visitor or a way awareness. You are aware of selfhood or formhood, shapehood. Like if there were a geometric, like let's say if the greatest geometrical artists of the world gathered in Burning Man and lived in like some kind of like chaotic wasteland scenario tribe, that tribe would be called shapehood. Sorry guys, I don't know why I felt such humor in that. There's this concept of the Flatlanders. Out of curiosity, how many people in the chat section are aware of the Flatlanders? Like that story of the Flatlanders. Okay. So I'll share it. Alright, guys, so just to make it short, the flatlander idea was pretty much imagine like the surface of your table being a two-dimensional world where only 2D shapes are living. Suddenly, if we put a cube on the table, those 2D beings in that 2D world would be like, holy shit, it's a miracle, a giant square appeared out of nowhere. And then we take that cube and put it like a bit of distance to the side, and then all the people would be like, oh my god, it's a miracle, the square disappeared and suddenly appeared. But in a three-dimensional view, it's a cube. And I am saying that the way we should see the multidimensionality of our world is very similar. That we are in a plane of conception. That's why I constantly use the plane of existence. Because if I don't know how many of the listeners notice, but it's kind of like when you're marching towards the unknown, you require as many troops as possible. What that means is you want to find a system that is all inclusive, and not because it's the solution, just to see if it can be done. That means you don't know the excitement an inventor, I'm pretty sure Edison felt this, the excitement of suddenly in your mind seeing the possibility of something and then just doing it. It's like that is like the play that should be work. That means your work should add dimensions to you, not take away dimensions, and not make you care less about your own mind. You know, comedians, I remember seeing this documentary, and many comedians were like so many talented comedians, they never came into the limelight because they were lost in a job they were too afraid to quit because life had become too comfortable. And for me, the purpose of life cannot be leisure, because then you miss out on many dimensions. Some dimensions you won't open up to you until you become responsible. That's why the concept of initiation was there in esoteric circles. And initiation did not mean that a group of people chose another person. That's not initiation. Initiation was the unknown will moves the known. And that means your initiation would be like suddenly a dove landing on your finger, staring at you as if nature knows you're here. You don't know how many movies, even in the movie Gladiator, there's a deleted scene where Marcus Aurelius at the beginning, I don't know if it's even a deleted scene or not, but there's just this scene in Gladiator, which is my favorite movie. And it's my favorite movie because it really inspired me towards film. Because it was the first time I saw heaven on screen. You know, like that's Ridley Scott. He deserves way more credit than philosophers should philosophers clap for this director. And it really depends on your level of how much you want to animate the unknown, guys. You know, like I can totally see like an object as simply an object. Like I can just look at something. No opinion, no form, no belief system, no philosophy. It's literally just blank staring. Now this blank staring, oh no. You know, we in Western civilization we thought that's foolishness, but in Eastern civilization that's the whole point of meditation. You know, I'm telling you, so many people can feel like fools in their cultural program, but if you were in another cultural program, you might feel you're doing the right thing. You know? And that's why rebellion occurs. Because not all our souls have found their homes. Sometimes it's like, it's not even living to grow old. It's living to see what the world will be. It's to engage it. I'm telling you, the healthiest, I don't know, this is like a view, but I'm saying like to live for life is to live for life. Because what stares out your eyes is the child of light, is it not? That means I totally respect my parents and I love them, but I cannot stop being in awe of how light is in my eyes right now. And so I'm appearing as a subject in an object. And so I'm telling you, eventually, it's like walk the desolate lands of the simulation, you will suddenly be like, what am I doing here? And in an instant, truth activates. It's just there's a self-worth issue that's limiting human beings from not having access to more intelligent states. And the civilization is not right now, our civilization is a fax machine. Okay? And when I say fax machine, people are like, yo, I don't even know what a fax machine is. Some like children nowadays probably will not know. you know? So I am telling you, an advanced civilization doesn't deserve an ancient relic as a crown. You know? It deserves modernity. That means imagine this grand renaissance. We don't call it rebellion, we don't even call it revolution. We say renaissance, but it's the renaissance of minds. It's the great gathering of minds. It was that moment where 8 billion creatures in history, it was that moment where they say, in history, in this grand endurance of forms, the spotlight is on right now. And I'm telling you, we have to be like, you learn from those who have fallen to rise again. And if you're not comfortable with the fall, you'll never be comfortable with the rise. Let me tell you, even if you're not comfortable with failure, you won't feel you deserve your success. If you feel you didn't put it, there needs to be a certain energetic interaction for value to be generated. That means so many people are stuck in the, I've noticed this at least in regards to like, business dimension. You can say so many people are still fishing for the idea, not realizing it's not about the idea. It's about really you just looking at, how can I tell you? It's like the market, the weather change. Okay, there we go, perfect. Your inner realms, there is movements that, as Sadhguru says, the content of your mind is not your choice. So what does that mean? That means the way the human being sees the self, like our ideas on ourself, are umbrellas. They're umbrellas, shielding, in some sense, individualizing us in a massive collective activity. You think gods are looking at man when they can look at themselves? The one God is looking at man because all phenomena is in its sight. You see, the whole point of the issues with church and state, this is why even though we see in America, like the world perceives it as an ignorant nation, but let me tell you, it has had, the Civil War in America was like a nation going through, getting its scars quickly. Do you know? So that's why in America there's a level of freedom, liberalism, that it's as if like it's equivalent to the abstract. Do you know? It's similar in Canada too. But I don't want to put Canada and America in the same category because it'd be kind of like mistaking twins. One of them is a nicer the twin, the other is a more intense twin. I'm a twin, by the way. I can speak about twins because I am one, guys. I remember even writing a story where all of those people who were twins, they got access to like this majestic, like advanced tower of technology. Oh man, it's jokes. Reality can be stretched in so many ways, yet at the end of the day, we're left with how we move our attention, how we sing our song, how we play our mind as an instrument. What I learned from Alan Watts was a fearless stare into the void. What I learned from Terence McKenna was a fearless stare into the infinite. And what I learned from myself is that within all that I see, space has no body. It is the mind itself. Conscious waking state is like a vacation for an unconscious mind. That means, think of it this way, that this life is like your sabbatical from your eternalhood. You're like it's like you endure it. Like, I'm speaking as a kind of neo-Buddhist. But it's kind of like being like, all right, I existed as a galaxy, for eons. Let me take a break. Let me see how, how creatures die in the eyes of gods. And really, what I can say, guys, is that everything is being painted by your energetic balance in the moment, if you notice. That's why I say piloting. Life is about piloting. It's not about like an airplane. Imagine your mind is like your plane of existence. Like, this was pretty much stuff I was keeping. Like, many people hear me in these talks. I pretty much speak about the two archetypes I've created: the archetype of the advanced communicator and the archetype of the pilot of consciousness. Now, the pilot of consciousness, this was the time where right now I'm kind of like doing some indoor work. And how can I tell you? I'm like Attila in the movie Mongol, where he's just sitting in some room waiting. I'm kind of in this like patient, like I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, then pour the cup of tea, And so that would, hopefully in the future, would mean is I would like, I don't know. These are like, of course, every day the vision is added dimensions, but it's like, sorry guys, this song behind. Like, I have headphones on right now, and there's Scottish bagpipes playing, and I have no idea why. So just give me a second so I can change this song. That moment where you came to talk about eternity and you heard Scottish bagpipes, in your $50 headphones. Okay, let's see here. I think I found something decent. Think of it this way. The educational system teaches you how to, it should, it's going to get there, keep going. The educational system will get to a point where I feel that it will start valuing the human being based on their potential, not based on their past. That means if we could just get rid of those 3 letters and put those other 8, we change the past into potential. Think about everything that has happened to your mind so far to be as if you have opened your eyes in a field, and these are the advanced tools given to you. That means at some point you realize there's no point of blaming anybody, because you have to journey through this life. It's like so many people, I understand the concept of having a career, but I think a career that doesn't include traveling is meaningless. And we should hopefully build a civilization where people are not stuck in working in fixed environments, because that's like literally going in a cave and slowly dying. Do you know? And it's very hard. It's a hard problem for the future generations, really. But it's a problem for all generations, that how can we make the inefficient patterns of history that are externalizing in the outer realms into efficient patterns. And it has to come from decisions, and decisions must come from awareness. Do you know, like, think of it this way: if you can't feel good being with yourself, you can say you can also not feel good when you're around others, and because you don't have their eyes, your mind is seeing a self in them. You see, we don't only see selves in ourselves, you know? That means, you know how many senses of self I've walked through behind my eyes as an attributeless presence, present witness? It's like, really, what can you say? After some point, it's like I can understand questioning the words on the paper. But then how can you question the empty page for being an empty page? You can judge what's manifest. That's why very few people have opinions on space. Because what is it? And in ancient times, they saw space as an element. That means, imagine we're all like fish in water, but instead human beings in space. And we feel this space doesn't have currents. And Mr.Within is saying is like, it does. It has intelligent currents. In ancient times, there were archetypes of personalities that they would suddenly be pulled by nature. That means, imagine like your family asking you to do something for them, and then imagine now the spirit of the logos of the world asking you. At that point, you're like, all right, this is pretty much what life is made for, to explore the unknown. But this means that you have to also be conscious of how you enter the unknown. You know. So guys, I feel like I'm gonna share something thanks to the I want to share with you, and for all those who have been extremely kind today, a concept from my science fiction novel that I feel it would be worth your time, and in some sense, pretty much it really relates, because many times when I have been pushed out of personality, and sometimes in life you can experience something that is intense or maybe chaotic, and the wind blows the branches of knowledge. The winds of evolution blow the branches of knowledge. I wanted to share with you, to be honest, not a chapter, but a way. My intent is to set forth a renaissance of advanced communication on this planet of ours, on this rock in the middle of nowhere. So I'm going to share with you how I designed the mythology, pretty much the world story of a giant science fiction novel work of mine. Okay? And pretty much, you see, God was necessary as a concept for man to acknowledge his own individuality, because it was a step into the subjective evolution that pretty much I'm saying we're objects, that we thought objects were truth, then we thought subjects were true, and we're still thinking subjects are we still think language holds the truth, but I am saying that the mind is just a storehouse of potential vision, and the attention pilots it, sets it into motion. Your attention is moving meaning. When you understand this, you'll realize learning from the teachings of your own mind, from your own intelligence. Imagine you were in an island. Who would be your guru? Who would be your teacher? You'd be like, okay, I'm left with my own intelligence. You know? Like, I could totally understand castaway situation, but if there was a situation where there was nothing, like the odds were worse, the person would probably go into a yogic state of mind. The person would be like, okay, if the movement of the world is being unauthorized, slowly I must find contentment with the authorizations of being in stillness. So when you accept yourself in the simplest way, for the first time you get to see how your authentic complexity looks like. So now to the story. I did something unique, and honestly, my inspiration for science fiction, writing science fiction, my whole science fiction work, pretty much I'm writing one giant book, and it's a tribute to my twin brother, who I feel he is the greatest novelist alive. Like, I feel like the greatest novelist. Like, that's and you'd be like, all right, Mr.Within, it's your brother, but I'm telling you guys, if you feel that certain things I perceive are far-sighted, you see, I don't know, it's about character observation. So what I'm telling you here is that pretty much my science fiction work is a tribute to how my brother's vision, his inner realms inspired me, you know? And of course, life moves in different ways. That means archetypes, people are a process of life. They're not just a snapshot character. So when you realize that, you get a complex awareness of how a character animates in the moment. Okay? So here's the thing. I have created in my science fiction novel now, most people, the stories I share from my science fiction, it's from this work I've done where I call it The Messenger of Giants. But that's one book, There is an early book where there's two books before that are happening and taking place before that giant book I wrote. And those books all go back to the life of the mythological origins of the world. Do you know? So I've kind of, let's say, it's kind of a strange situation. I've designed, the book is written behind my eyes, but not with physically, It is written, but it hasn't been polished. I've pretty much written everything. It's just not polished, But anyways, the story I'm going to share to the patrons of this talk there is a character which the end of The Messenger of Giants is an event. The whole book is leading towards an event. And this event is so unique and so mind-boggling that in some sense, that event, there is a character named Farda. So my background is Persian, and Farda means tomorrow. And some of my characters in my novels, some of them, they're two Persian phrases, or they're just words of my, I was attempting to keep my bilingualism alive in my novel, just for my own self, Because when a person draws an artwork, it's not just the eyes of others looking at it, their own eyes are looking at it, so they get an emotional feeling of what they do, So there's a character named Farda. Farda is a very unique character, and if this was a film, he would start off in this scene with this giant, not giant, like this smaller, like a handball, the sport handball, like a handball-sized sphere is following him in the air, like a meter above his shoulder. And the handball thing is like, it's like an intelligent being, but it's following Farda as if like a bodyguard, but it's an orb. It's just this like sphere. Just a second, guys. I gotta clear my throat. All right, guys. Sorry about that. I had to get a quick refresher. All right, guys. Pretty much, Farda is this character where he is this like young kid. I thought about my own childhood, and it's like this young kid, and he has this digital sphere, this advanced technological sphere, and he's pretty much walking and going somewhere, and the spirit, the god of the universe, which is a giant bird, with his head is like the eagle head of it's like the body of a human, but the head of an eagle, but instead of having in some sense what do you call it, hands, it's just like wings, do you know? So it's as if it's kind of like this humanoid eagle archetype, and Farion is his name, Farion, you can even say Farian, far Ian, right? So Farian is the god of the universe, and the mythology of the universe is that every feather of this of Farian is a universe, and only few individuals are in some sense pecked by the beak of the divine. And Farda is this kid that in some sense he is the first book is called Farian's Arrival, the second book is called Lord Mistos, Lord Mistos, the geometrical archangel. You know, the geometrical messenger. I think it's either archangel or messenger. And so that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to actually share a scene where Farda meets Lord Mistos, right? So Lord Mistos is the archangel of geometry. That means imagine if there was a dimension where all phenomena was geometric and there was God embodied in that dimension, like as if the hand of God, it would be the hand of Therian is Lord Mistos. He is in some sense the geometrical balance bringer. Every time he appears, I'll leave that. I'll tell you what happens when he appears. So Farda is this kid, and he's this kid with a strange divine nature. But his divine nature is this sort of playful abidance of his intuition. Like you see, it's as if he's like a kid. Do you know? Guys, this is my science fiction I'm sharing, so don't freak out too much. But anyways, really, really what it is that, so in this scene, it's going to be very hard for you to kind of picture, but I'm just sharing what I can about it. Pretty much he's this kid on a divine journey, and this divine journey is pretty much how Therian has chosen Farda, which his name literally means tomorrow, but in the Farsi language. And Farda is in some sense, he's chosen by Therian, and Therian is guiding him. So it's pretty much, if it was a movie, it'd be a kid going through different events. It'd be just the story is just following the journeys of Farda. Okay. Now, what happens is that I'm just remembering one scene now that I'm sharing with you. There is a scene where Farda, he's playfully, as if he hears in his ears a divine melody, and he's following that tune. And there's this scene, guys, check this out. This scene is like, I gotta find the right song to listen to in the background for this. Just hang on. This scene is epic. So, guys, something unique I've never done. Anybody who's listening to me right now, I want you to play this song that I played a YouTube link for. This YouTube. This is a song, okay? Play this song, if you like. You can play this song in the background as I'm speaking, because right now I'm listening to that song and speaking. Okay, maybe it might be interesting for the listeners to kind of get a sense of what vibe I'm in. So, all right. This is what's happening in the scene. The divine melody in the ears of Farda leads him into a strange forest. He enters the forest where I have still not thought of what to call it, but I've had attempts at it. Like when you think of an idea, you think of models to it, different models, different approaches, different angles of perception to it, right? So I can say this would be he enters the forest of, you can say, all existential perversions. He enters, and what that appears is just like this forest where everything is just dark. Do you know? Everything is just different shades between gray and dark, black. Do you know? The color of the trees and everything. You know, and the only light is this strange moonlight. You know? Now, guys, this is I was literally watching my inner realms, and then I just picked up a pen and I wrote this down. This is what I saw. Fardo is this kid. He's this boy, you know. He goes, he's like kind of stumbling in his playful, intuitive, kind of divine atmosphere of his inner melody. He's hearing Farian's tune. He's hearing Farian's, you know how, what do you call it? Birds, what's the term? How birds have a calling, like a certain noise they make. So similarly, Farian, in the god of the universe, Farda, his ears have opened up, you know? So in this story, you also see there's this concept of the ancient listeners, which are these very ancient, they are pretty much the ancient listeners are the first souls of existence of the universe. They're called the ancient listeners in this story. And they are kind of, it's like, it's strange. It's like, how can I tell you? Like the whole journey is for Farda to realize he's Farian, but through a specific person. Which in the Messenger of Giants in the third book it's revealed. Now, so what happens in this scene is that, guys, this is a bit chaotic, but I'm going to share it. You know, that's the point of science fiction. Let me see if I remember. He enters the forest. That spirit thing is beside him. Suddenly, this girl appears. That's her body. She's wearing this. The girl, similar to his age, appears, and she's wearing this kind of like stitched up cloth all around her with this sort of kind of, how can I tell you, red demonic vibe. She's like this kind of like you feel like it's a demon child or something, you know. I don't know how I wrote it, but it was like it like, you know what I mean. The imagery of it was like this, and Rasoul is the child that demon child is like, he doesn't even have eyes. Like it's like I don't know how to explain the face, but it's this messed up kind of mummy infused with demon, like Pharaoh times mummy infused with you know. But I don't know, like I don't know how to say that. But this messed up girl appears. Now, this is the chaotic thing, where in that instant, Rasoul is singing a song, and beside the chaotic girl, from one of the thin trees, as if there was nothing behind the tree, as if there's an invisible portal from behind the tree, this unfathomable, messed up giant demon, kind of giant version of the girl appears. Do you know? And it's this messed up fiendish kind of creature. So imagine Farda is there in this kind of, you know, dark forest, and in this forest of sort of existential darkness or something, you know. The existential perversions, you know, the chaotic fulfillments of the extreme. So, anyways, in that instant, suddenly, Farda the kid, he stops hearing the song, you know, and he sits down and starts crying. He's a little kid. And in that moment, you see the giant, like, guys, just imagine this scene if it was a movie. You see that giant demonic kind of version of that small girl that just appeared out of nowhere run towards Farda like a creature about to devour him. That small sphere, check this out. That small sphere suddenly opens up, becomes this giant, like Pacific Rim looking kind of robot, and starts defending. So the scene is Farda, this little kid in the forest, starts crying and he's covered his eyes. Do you know? And then there's that little girl, kind of messed up girl that came. And then the two giants, the sphere that turned into this giant robot and this giant demon. Because I've seen a lot in television, in entertainment, but I haven't seen the demonic kind of imagery you see in films of being fought against robotics. So imagine robots fighting demons, right? So it's this mess. It's like usually it's always centered around the human being. You know, we never see zombies fighting dragons in movies, you know? I mean, technically we do. I can't say that, you know, Game of Thrones is that. But let me say what we don't find. We don't find, for example, zombies fighting aliens. And if there is a movie, guys, where zombies are fighting aliens, please send me that. I want to watch that. So, anyways, I just want to see that this little kid, suddenly this demon thing appears and wants to attack, and the kid starts crying and covers his eyes and kind of goes into this childlike kind of crying position, you know, like covering his, like, you know how someone kneels their back behind a wall and just kind of is just in their own isolation and whatnot, you know. So the sphere has turned into this giant robot, and in this dark kind of moonlight lit forest, this giant robot, everything is silent. There's nothing in sight. This giant demon and this giant robot are fighting, you know. And so in that moment, it's kind of like Fardo's there. I remember the girl coming, and the girl, suddenly, it's as if even though these two giants are fighting, the girl just comes and says, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" And then the whole process is that he doesn't fight. This kid, as he's being called to the universal kind of godhead in the science fiction universe, Farian, he is in some sense every being, every chaotic force that sees him is also being transformed. That means it's like Farda to all the other beings in all the other dimensions is technically God returning to himself. Do you know? It's like that kind of archetypal relationship and story structure. So there is a scene now, that was one incident, for example, where Farda gets through that, but I just thought that was a very cool thing to see, like a giant, like a small spear turn into this giant robot and defend this little kid from this giant demonic thing, you know? Like it's kind of like, I don't know. It's because you see, some people do see a lifeless dimension. So seeing like that part scene in the story would probably be like chaos released against chaos, like Alien and Predator, like how that movie was, you know, and without maybe that kind of effect on the viewer. But anyways, it's just a story, guys. Now there is another scene where Lord Mistos arrives and Farda is about to die. The sphere thing fails, is occupied, and some force is about to destroy Farda, and in that instant, what happens is that the whole plane stops. Everything slows down. Everything like you know how a video game you pause everything? Like pause like a video? Everything freezes, you know, the frame freezes, and what happens is that every time Lord Mistos arrives, everything, the walls stretching from the walls and everything turns and becomes geometric. That's why he's the archangel of geometry. He is how there's a geometrical dimension that is the space between the gap of man and God's hand in the Sistine Chapel. We have to create space for new experiences and new things in life, and the only stargate to other dimensions is novelty. I remember I went to give a talk and I called it the two stargates on your face. There are two stargates on your face, yeah. Pretty much, isn't that a gate for light to become a subject? Could a lens strangely be a portal? So, anyways, guys, Lord Mistos arrives in that freeze-framed moment where Farda is about to die, and every time Lord Mistos has a conversation, and he has a conversation where Lord Mistos in the story, he is like, he would have a similar archetype, closer to maybe he's like an infusion of Archangel Michael and Archangel Gabriel from the Christian tradition. You know, and of course, in the Islamic tradition and Judaic traditions, these are present, it seems. A similar pattern. But the thing is that Lord Mistos is remembering his innocence when he speaks to Farda. And he tells him every time, in some sense, you can say, Farda is on a roller coaster ride in the story where he, in some sense, nothing can go wrong. It's set before. It's as if sometimes, it's like, for example, you see it. For example, like when people saw Game of Thrones, everybody felt like Jon Snow deserves to be a king. You know, but they didn't think he'd be the king of the wild men only, you know? You know, if Brand in Game of Thrones had respect for his older brother, he would most likely make his older brother king, you know? And even though he's not his actual older brother, but you know, you gotta be true to the fan. Oh man. I don't know, guys. Your mind is the vision board, really. You know, trust me, like a person can take inner notes. I've had times where I've had a very sophisticated, like complex conversation with someone simultaneously. I've been thinking about something else and doing something else in my inner realms. Eventually, once you abide as the witness, you can say you're allowing yourself to have a new experience, so that a new angle or a new archetype is found. You know, you do something different that makes you feel you're living in a different dimension. Not a different dimension, a different dimension of perception. Sadhguru, the sage, he says, and guys, I hope you like that story. You know, it's even though it was just scenes, but there's a lot to it, guys. I'm telling you, it's like anything. Think of it this way: you are the life of the moment, literally. What that means is your attention has unknown value, and the world is just known tools you can use. You know, something, some people may think this is a bit chaotic, but I feel this is kind of staying honest to what's happened. When, if you really want to look at human activity, we have the ability to reduce it to not just nothing, but reduce it to prior to nothing, to the primitive. So the moment man identifies with his past, it's as if the space of your mind is occupied by your past. So when you look at your past, you can't change your past, so you can be endlessly upset about it. You can endlessly be upset about your past because it's past. What can you do? It's like that moment passed, you know? Do you know how many uncomfortable moments I've lived through? and also many comfortable moments. But eventually, when I became comfortable with my mind, that discomfort translated uniquely and kind of like in a, unconscious way, it became conscious. You realize your eyes are here and you calm down, and then you begin your great work. That means, I think the best thing, guys, I'll leave you off with this. Ask yourself, if you were looking through the eyes of your grandchildren, what would you want to see? Or who would you be? in the eyes of your grandchildren. In that way, you have considered enough of a far future to care for the world, and then look at yourself. And I'm telling you guys, writing is like the mind communicating. Anytime anything arises, it's like there's design to it. So I'm telling you, intelligence is about taking off the boxes that nature put on your head, because you really can't blame anyone in a collective system. It's like, can you really blame the polar bears, you know, or for ruining Coke? I'm joking. The polar bears were like, you guys dare ruin, you know, our oceans, you know? We're gonna kind of be in every anyways, I'll move past this. But anyways, just kind of write, guys. Have a sort of wilderness to wonder about your intelligence, because you really only get one lifetime to do so. After you've conducted a certain study of who you feel you are as a being, eventually you will realize any sort of self-value is codependent to a collective value. So it's like there's a sort of excitement when, think of it this way, imagine one of your friends suddenly did something advanced and you got super excited, you know? Now imagine one day you woke up and your whole civilization did something advanced, and you, like, what would be the intensity of that excitement? So the more complex something becomes, it is true that there can be more errors, and it can be, like, the structure can fall down easier, maybe, sooner. But it's one of those things where the effort is the life of it. The effort. So everybody is technically, their attention is drawing their self. So when, just look at this, when you, like many people who are listening to this, day to day, when you go in your walks in society, when you speak to people, just watch silently and wonder about how is this person look, what world is this person seeing behind their eyes. When you see that, you can't have even any sort of ego or selfishness, because you're like, oh my God, it's as if behind every person's eyes there's like hidden art galleries. And you know, we must find ways to bring the inner realms outer. So I am telling you, now more than ever in history, there is a greater need for the advancement and evolution of language and communication, which means we have to advance our inner technologies as a species. And that means we're looking for meaning. We don't have meaning. That means if somebody comes and says, what's the point of life? You know, what about this idea you're saying, Mr.Within? You know, how does this help the purpose of life? You know, and I'll be like, sometimes the purpose of life is living for the potential that the answer will one day be found. That means if we eradicate the mystery of other dimensions, we have denied the potential of them. And that's the issue with too much of a materialistic gaze of life. So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. And thanks everybody for your contributions and for listening. I really appreciate it. And in the School of Athens, I will be sharing a lot of my books. You know, there's a lot I've written, guys. Right now, I'm going to tell you, probably for the next week, I'm going on this massive organization of all my work because of the quarantine. And so it's a situation where, like, how can I tell you, like, alongside these talks that I give, I'm working on something on the side. A bunch of things, really. And some seeds you plant, and you gotta just water them every day until you see where it goes. Because there's more utility in creativity than destruction. It's easy to do violence. That's why when you see violence, it's not an intelligent sight. So, anyways, guys, blessings and thanks for listening. Oh my God, 2 hours, 30 minutes. I think I just broke a record. No, actually, I've spoken more, way more. But thanks for tuning in, guys.